Hello perfumers and bloomers, Aaron here, back with another video. Emilie's release is just beyond the horizon, and as per usual, everyone that wants her is wondering, how do I build her? What team options are best? Does insert so-and-so character's name here work with her? Before we waft our way over to the answers of all of these questions, I just have to say that if you do like my content, then why not take a bite out of that pommier flavored subscribe button down below. But with that out of the way, let's start off right with the overview. Emilie's skill has her place a Lumidu's case down, dealing damage in an AoE. While the case is active, it will deal single target dendro damage once every 1.5 seconds and apply dendro at a normal rate, which would be once every other volley of attacks. When opponents are burning, the case collects a stack called Sense once per 2 seconds. After it collects 2, the Lumidu's case levels up, dealing increased damage and firing twice every 1.5 seconds instead of once. If the level 2 case does not collect any Sense in 8 seconds, it will revert back to level 1 and only one case can be active at a time. Emilie's burst has her summon a new Lumidu's case, this time at level 3. When she does this, all other currently placed cases will be destroyed. For the next 2.8 seconds, this level 3 case will rain 9 instances of dendro damage from above, similar to Ganyu and Ayato's burst. After the duration is over, a new level 1 Lumidu's case will be deployed. If she destroyed a level 2 Lumidu's case from before, then a level 2 Lumidu's case will be deployed instead. Emilie's exploration passive is one of the few that actually impacts her playstyle. As long as a Lumidu's case is out on the field, her entire team will gain 85% resistances against the burning reaction. Emilie's Ascension 1 passive releases an additional small AoE attack onto the enemy whenever 2 cents are collected from her skill. This attack will normally occur about 4 times per rotation. This attack has no ICD, and this attack does not count as any specific damage type, so its damage can only be impacted through dendro or all type stat changes. Emilie's Ascension 4 passive increases the damage she deals to burning targets based on her attack. For every 1000 attacks she has, her damage dealt increases by 15%, capping at 2400 attack at 36% damage bonus. Emilie's talent priority is pretty straightforward. All of her damage is split between her skill, Ascension 1 passive, and burst, so I recommend just leveling her burst and skill together while leaving her normals to rot. Emilie doesn't have a complicated combo section. Use your skill and burst if it's up. Since she can't snapshot and since she can support up to 25-second rotations, you can use her wherever in the team rotation too. But with her base kit done, let's see how good her constellations are overall. Emilie's first constellation increases the scaling on her skill and Ascension 1 passive effect by 20%. Additionally, once every 2.9 seconds, when any ally triggers burning or deals dendro damage to burning opponents, Ascent will be gathered by her skill. This would mean that her skill will now start at level 2 and her Ascension 1 passive would have an increased fire rate, netting her about 2 or 3 more triggers depending on the rotation duration. Both of these buffs turn out to be such insane damage increases that it turns this constellation into debatably her second best. Her C2 is incredibly simple, as it grants her 30% dendro resistance shred on her skill, burst, and Ascension 1 passive. This constellation is very good for buffing her personal damage as well as any blooms her team may trigger, which is where most of its power comes from. If no blooms are triggered, this constellation becomes only pretty good, but when considering the bloom damage increase, this constellation can have more impact on her team's damage than her first. Emilie's C3 is her worst constellation, as it merely buffs the lower scaling on her elemental skill. Her C4 is much better though, as it turns out to be one of the better C4s in the game. It increases the duration of her elemental burst by 2 whole seconds and reduces the retargeter time of it by 0.3 seconds. The former is the true value of this constellation though, as it will allow her burst to hit up to 16 times instead of 9, nearly doubling its damage while also allowing her to support up to 27-second long rotations. This damage increase turns out to be rather large, but it also puts a larger emphasis on her burst than her skill and Ascension 1 passive. So before you decide to get this constellation, I highly recommend you get her signature weapon before this point, as it will help make her burst more accessible while also buffing her damage up the wazoo. Emilie's C5's burst level increase is better than her C3's skill level increase, oddly enough. That's mainly because of her C4, which massively buffed the potency of buffs to her elemental burst. Emilie's C6 gives her a large amount of dendro burst damage on her normal and charge attacks after using her skill or burst. When she deals damage with her dendro, normal, and charge attacks, she will collect Ascent. This large damage buff will last for 5 seconds or after 4 cents are collected, leading to a short on-field time and 2 activations of her Ascension 1 passive no matter the team. This constellation is great for the additional front-loaded damage increase, especially when paired with her 4th constellation and the extra Dendro application, making it useful in every team imaginable. This is her best constellation for obvious reasons, increases her damage and enables her to function decently in many more teams. Emilie is a limited Fontaine character, and as such, she has one of the best constellation spreads in the game. The best part is that she's not locked out of her kit like some other units' constellation spreads. She has everything at base, but she still gets better and better as you vertically invest. That being said, I think it is a good idea to go for her constellations if you'd like to. Everything she has is rather strong, and they are solid increases to a solid kit, with her best being her first 2 and her 6, like most others. But with that done, let's move on to how to gear Emilie up, starting with artifact options. Emilie's default artifact option is Unfinished Reverie, as it increases her attack and massively boosts her damage percent when enemies are burning. Since this is her niche, this condition does not matter for her, and it will prove to always be very valuable for her. However, she does have other options that can perform better based on the situation. Deepwood Memories is one of those sets that is always strong for her for its ability to shred Dendro resistances. While this will decrease her damage by about 4%, it will increase other Dendro damage. This matters a lot when considering that some of the best burn teams include Vaporize and therefore Burgeon into the mix. In these teams, damage increase from Reverie is only about 1%. This isn't much of an increase, but this set is significantly more resin efficient to farm for, and a lot of Emilie's better teams do still include Burgeon. All of these factors contribute to Deepwood being debatably her best artifact set before C2. At the end of the day, the choice is up to you, but I would recommend Deepwood since it will usually be better than Reverie in most of her better teams. It is very resin efficient to farm for, and no one else that uses this set wants to make use of the exact same stat lineup that Emilie desires. Speaking of, the main stats you're looking to go for on Emilie are the normal attack, damage, and crit, with zero room for variance. For Emilie's substats, you're looking for a crit ratio of the normal 1 to 2, aiming for a minimum of 75 to 150. Then look for some attack percent, aiming between 1600 at the bare minimum and 2400 attack at the maximum. Lastly, try to pick up some elemental mastery and some energy recharge, as the little bit you get for her will help her deal more damage. However, neither of these stats are necessary and should just be seen as little extra bonuses. For weapon options, Emilie doesn't have many good free-to-play ones out there. It's so bad that she has a Honkai Star Rail signature light cone problem where hers is just way too good. Lumidu's Elegy is her best in slot weapon for obvious reasons. It offers free crit, a good base attack, some attack percent, and some damage percent, plus energy generation when burning is active. This polearm is so good that it is about 30% stronger than her second best option, which is one of the largest damage differences between best in slot and second best in slot in the game. The only upgrade to her damage output that is better is getting Furina or getting Emilie C6. It's freaking insane. If you're looking for Emilie, I highly recommend you get her weapon. This polearm is absolutely grotesque. Even her second best weapon, Staff of Homa, is nowhere near as good. It offers about the same attack and crit stats, but with none of the extra benefits. Despite that, it is still good, and even without the additional passive attack buff that it can offer, it still performs better than the third option, Calamity Queller. This weapon is perfect for her as an off-field unit, but falls off hard when she's used on-field, which could happen quite a bit. Crimson Moon Semblance and Primordial Jadewing Spear share the next step for an off-field unit. Technically, Jade would be better due to the itty-bitty amount of extra attack it'll offer and due to it being significantly better when used on-field, but those will rarely make an impact overall. Staff of Scarlet Sands is also good, though she will never receive max stacks from the passive. She will also normally never have a good amount of elemental mastery for it to convert into a reasonable attack buff, rendering this weapon as just a crit stat stick. Then we have the more obtainable weapons, starting with the Battle Pass's Battle of the Fjords. This weapon's crit stat and massive elemental mastery stat go a long way toward increasing her damage, despite the terrible elemental mastery scaling that burning has. However, if someone other than Emilie takes priority of the burning reaction, this weapon will fall a few spots. Vortex Vanquisher is also good as just a stat stick due to the large amount of attack it offers, even without the passive. However, if she is used on field, this weapon will plummet in usability since Bennett will usually buff Emilie's attack stat, making weapons with other stats the priority on her. Deathmatch is the next Battle Pass weapon that is very good. It will normally be better for Emilie's less raw damage than reactionary damage. Prospector's Drill is also good, but it is gacha specific and pretty much requires Fiorina to use. Thankfully, her best free-to-play weapon, Missive Windspear, is next, and it's not far behind. It does offer elemental mastery though, which means that, again, if ownership of Burn disappears, then the next weapon, Skyward Spine, is better. This weapon offers a great base attack, decent crit stat, and some energy recharge, which allows her to get her burst up consistently. If unable to burst every rotation, Moonpiercer would be better due to its consistent attack buff, though again, it also has an elemental mastery buff, which means Skyward would be better depending on the team. Now that we geared her up, it's time to mention who she pairs well with, starting with her best synergies. Bennett is one of the best units to use alongside Emilie, mostly due to his insane buffing potential. When played on field, Emilie heavily benefits from the massive attack buff he offers, as her personal damage would increase by about 50%. Everyone who has played Bennett in burning teams would know that he has a major issue with burning his teammates alive due to the pyro aura he constantly applies to himself. Emilie would reduce the damage that burning would deal to them, making Bennett a fully competent healer in burning teams again. It would also technically enable on-fielders to use the Marais Chaussee Hunter set pretty reliably. Then there's Fiorina, who is Emilie's best support right now because of her ability to forward vape consistently in burning-related teams and her massive team-wide damage percent buff. Emilie deals good damage that is kept in check by the fact that most of it will usually not be buffed. Fiorina is the only one at the current moment who can heavily buff all of Emilie's damage output while both are off-field. Fiorina also has slow and sporadic hydro application, which enables her to work very well as a forward vape DPS when off-field. This allows her to deal 80% more damage in burning teams while also triggering blooms for a pyro damage dealer to react off of. Fiorina is so incredibly powerful in burning teams for these reasons that she would usually wind up increasing Emilie's damage by nearly 30% and the damage of the team by between 20 to 60%. The final character I want to mention is Dea, who needs both of the supports that Emilie works with in order to deal damage, and who could wield the Deepwood set as a support in order to buff Emilie's personal damage output. Dea's application also matches decently with Emilie's to consistently and constantly keep the burning aura up on multiple enemies. These two are a solid pair, and if Dea does end up being cracked from good artifact sets and or her C6, you can expect these three to be one of Emilie's best comps. Because burning is used as a reaction to react off of, you'll find that Emilie has a larger amount of team comp options at her disposal than you might first expect. Emilie's best comps are her burn melt or burn vape teams due to her immense raw damage being activated while also allowing another unit to react off of the burning reaction that she relies on for damage. These teams have the highest potential damage output due to these factors, and it is where she will play the best. Pure burning teams can also work, but they lack the extra reactionary damage in order to keep up with the melt and vape ones from before. Despite that, they will still reach the DPS requirement for completing most chambers. Nilo teams also enable this due to her large raw damage from her burst and the extra dendro application. However, Nahida is practically mandatory here for the large amount of dendro application that she offers, which makes up for Emilie's lackluster application. You could also use Emilie as a main DPS, but it requires both Bennett and Fiorina to function effectively due to their insane buffs. Any Animo unit can go in the last slot for the extra pyro application and damage buffing, and anyone that can reliably wield the Deepwood set can be used too, specifically for the resistance shredding. This comp is so strong that she should be able to match most other main DPS units in damage as long as she's paired with these two. Finally, we have her weakest of teams, that of which being Quicken related ones. Here, her damage drops off of a cliff. However, it does boost the relevance of her burst, since that will be the source of a violent majority of her damage output. It also incentivizes shorter rotations to get the maximum value out of her damage, to the point where these teams could potentially surpass some of her other weaker teams. And finally, let's end off the video with Emilie's rating. Emilie's personal damage output is rather large. With just the burning reaction, her damage would reach an average 4 on my ranking. However, her damage can be buffed to a 5 on average using just one character. While her AoE damage is rather mid, her single target would reach around a 5 or higher without any buffs at all. With how easy it is for Emilie to reach this 5 out of 5 rating and damage, I think she definitely earns the top score for this spot. Her application is where things start to go downhill, as it's rather sporadic with low AoEs, and if she's not included in burning, she has almost none at all. This nets her a low 1.5 out of 5 for application. For offensive utility, she has none, which is quite concerning for a unit that's supposed to be involved in a specific niche. However, the Deepwood set competes with Reverie as her best set, and it does end up buffing the damage of another's bloom damage, so I think I shall grant her a 0.5 out of 5 considering the occasional supportive utility. Emilie's particle generation is once every 2.5 seconds, which would lead to 6 dendro particles per average rotation. However, most teams involving Emilie do not desire another dendro unit for her to battery, and she herself will not be on field for her to battery herself, earning her a rather low 1 out of 5. Emilie's only defensive utility is her team-wide damage resistance to burning. This is good specifically for burning and nothing else, which in my opinion earns her a 0.5 out of 5. Emilie is a lot more flexible and versatile than most give her credit for. She's not just some Nilo on fire. There's much more to her than that. Burning is a terrible reaction on its own, but it does end up enabling other reactions to perform more consistently. This enables her to work in Vape, Melt, and Burgeon-related teams pretty easily, and due to her having decent dendro application, she can solo support quick and focused teams and some quick bloom ones too. On top of that, as long as she's supported by Bennett, she could act as a very solid main DPS due to his massive attack buff impacting her entire kit. She could work in about half of the teams in the game while also being able to function as 2 of the main roles in a team. This puts her at a solid 2.5 out of 5 for flexibility and versatility, which is oddly good considering she's supposed to be niche. Overall, Emilie's damage is rather high and can even compete with some main DPS's damage output given you build her specifically for it. She can also support decently well with the Deepwood set, and she could work in many different teams. However, her major downside is that she has no utility in her base kit. It's all just damage, which is what I think earns her a below average 2 out of 5, and it leads me to her largest weakness. Emilie is a burning DPS unit with no utility. Since Genshin's teams can only host 4 different members, Emilie will fight against others in the slot she'd want to be in. Right now, she's fighting with Nihida, Baizhu, and Yaoyao for that slot, who all offer some utility. Each of these units also have an easier time of enabling other better off-field supports, which puts each of them on a similar playing field as Emilie. In this way, Emilie's very similar to Chiori with her mono Geo teams. Chiori deals massive damage, but so does Fiorina, while also buffing the team's damage, though she does require a healer. But the moment a Geo or Hydro healer is released that synergizes well with mono Geo, Chiori won't be best at what she's currently best at. Both of these units offer damage and only damage, which makes both of them incredibly susceptible to power creep for the Spiral Abyss. However, there is the brand new Imaginarium Theater Endgame game mode, which seems to incentivize versatility and raw damage in characters over anything else. These 2 traits are exactly what Emilie has, which would make her a fantastic character as long as some sort of pyro is present. But it is still hard to tell since she hasn't been released yet, and the Imaginarium Theater is still super new. But those are just my thoughts on Emilie. Now I want to hear yours. What do you think of her? Do you plan to pull her, or do you plan to save for some Natlan characters like Murata or Shivalonke? How do you plan to build her? Do you plan to use the Deepwood set, or do you plan to use Unfinished Reverie? Do you want her signature weapon, or are you looking toward her Constellations? Tell me all your thoughts in the comments down below. But with that, I will skedaddle. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!